The Lost City of Pompeii. In what is today the comune of Pompei, close to Naples in the Campania region of Italy, was the ancient city of Pompeii. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, Pompeii was buried under 4 to 6 meters of volcanic ash and pumice, along with Herculaneum and other villas in the vicinity. The excavated city, which was largely intact under the ash, provided a unique glimpse into Roman life, frozen at the time it was buried, while much of the delicate evidence of its inhabitants' day-to-day activities was lost in the excavations. With a population of about 11,000 in AD 79, it was a prosperous town that had a number of exquisite public buildings and opulent private homes that were the main attractions for the earliest archaeologists. The ash contained organic material, such as wooden artifacts and human remains. As they withered over time, gaps were left behind that archaeologists later discovered could be utilized as molds to create plaster castings of distinctive, frequently gory, figures in their final moments of life. In contrast to the formal language used by the classical writers, the countless graffiti carved on the walls and inside of rooms offer a wealth of examples of the largely extinct vulgar Latin spoken at the period. With over 2.5 million tourists each year, Pompeii is one of the most visited tourist destinations in Italy and is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Major excavations were restricted to specific, prioritized regions after extensive past excavations that had uncovered the majority of the city but left it in ruin. These sparked new discoveries in some of the city's uncharted regions in 2018 as a result. The basis of the word Pompeii would appear to be the Oscan word for the number 5, Pompei, writes Theodor Kraus. This suggests that either the settlement consisted of 5 small villages or perhaps it was inhabited by a family group. Pompeii was constructed on a coastal lava plateau formed by prior eruptions of Mount Vesuvius, which is located about 8 kilometers (5.0 miles) away, at a height of around 40 meters, 130 feet. The plateau abruptly descended into the sea to the south and in part to the west. On top of the lava are 3 layers of silt from significant landslides that may have been caused by prolonged rainfall. The city, which was previously near the water, is now about 700 meters, 2,300 feet, inland. Lagoons provided protection near the mouth of the navigable Sarno River, which was used by early Greek and Phoenician sailors as a port of refuge before being built by the Romans. Based on household statistics, Pompeii housed 11,000 to 11,500 people across a total area of 64 to 67 hectares, 160 to 170 acres. Although it is best known for the Roman ruins that can still be seen there, dating from AD 79, it was actually constructed upon a sizable city that dates from much earlier. After the Battle of Cumae, the Greeks immediately began to accelerate the city's growth from its original core, the Old Town. The Oscans, a group from central Italy, established 5 towns there in the 8th century BC, marking the beginning of permanent habitation on the location. Around 740 BC, the Greeks began to settle in Campania, and Pompeii soon found itself in their sphere of influence. The Doric Temple, which was constructed out from the center in what would eventually become the Triangular Forum, is the most significant structure from this time period. The cult of Apollo was also introduced at the same time. The area served as a safe port for Greek and Phoenician mariners. A 2-day eruption took place. The majority of the population was able to flee during the first phase of pumice rain, which lasted for around 18 hours. The fact that just 1,150 corpses have been discovered at the scene so far seems to support this notion, and the majority of escapees undoubtedly managed to keep some of their most priceless possessions. Numerous bones were discovered with jewelry, cash, and silverware. Pyroclastic flows, which are composed of fast-moving, dense, and scorching ash clouds, started to form close to the volcano sometime during the night or early the following day. They destroyed all buildings in their path completely or in part, incinerated or suffocated the remaining population, and changed the landscape, including the coastline. The eruption ended by the sunset of the second day, leaving just a faint sunshiny haze in the atmosphere. Prior to this, it was thought that people in Pompeii and the nearby towns died from ash suffocation. However, a multidisciplinary volcanological and bioanthropological study of the eruption products and victims, combined with numerical simulations and experiments, shows that heat was the main cause of death. The study's findings, which were published in 2010, demonstrate that even if humans were shielded inside of structures, exposure to at least 250 degrees Celsius hot pyroclastic flows at a distance of 10 kilometers from the vent was sufficient to cause instant death. Up to 12 distinct layers of tephra, totaling up to 6 meters deep, were deposited over the inhabitants and structures of Pompeii. The marble statues from the Forum and other priceless materials from structures were among the items that survivors and probably thieves came to recover shortly after the city was buried. Widespread post-eruption disturbances seen, including holes drilled into walls. The tops of larger buildings would have been visible above the ash because the city was not entirely submerged, making it easy to dig or find building materials. The thieves left evidence of their presence, such as a wall graffiti reading "House Dug" that modern archaeologists discovered in a house. Although it continued to be listed on the Tabula Peutingeriana from the 4th century, its name and location were forgotten throughout the ensuing decades. Additional eruptions, particularly those in 471 to 473 and 512, deeply buried the remains. The next documented date that any part was discovered was in 1592, when architect Domenico Fontana ran onto old walls covered in drawings and inscriptions while digging an underground aqueduct to the mills of Torre Annunziata. His tunnel traversed much of the city and was buried beneath it, passing through numerous structures and foundations that may still be seen in various locations today. He yet kept the discovery a secret. Francesco Piketty discovered a wall inscription in 1689 that said Decurio Pompeiis, town councillor of Pompeii, but he connected it to a Pompei palace. Giuseppe Macroni, who in 1693 unearthed several walls and declared that Pompeii was beneath, concurred with Francesco Bianchini's interpretation of the genuine meaning. When the French took control of Naples in 1799 and then Italy from 1806 to 1815, there was significant advancement in exploration. The area where Pompeii is located was taken over, and 700 people were employed in the excavations. The absence of air and moisture kept everything buried beneath Pompeii well preserved for nearly 2,000 years, allowing for minimal to no deterioration. However, after excavation, Pompeii was subject to anthropogenic and natural decay. The site has been harmed in some form by weathering, erosion, light exposure, water damage, improper excavation and restoration techniques, introduced plants and animals, tourism, vandalism, and theft. All but the most intriguing and significant buildings' original interior decorations have faded or been lost due to a lack of sufficient weather protection. Even though 2/3 of the city has been excavated, the remaining portions are quickly eroding. In addition, during World War II, bombs dropped during numerous raids by the Allies' forces severely damaged or completely destroyed many buildings. Archaeologists have long been concerned about the conservation issue. The World Monuments Fund first listed the ancient city in its World Monuments Watch in 1996. It did so again in 1998 and 2000. The organization demanded the creation of a general plan for restoration and interpretation in 1996, claiming that Pompeii desperately needed repair. The majority of financing today goes toward maintaining the site, but given the size of Pompeii and the severity of the issues, this is insufficient to stop the material's progressive deterioration. Modern archaeologists have uncovered the agricultural foundations of Pompeii's economy by excavating garden areas and urban domains. It was fortunate for Pompeii to have fertile soil for growing crops. It has been discovered that the soils surrounding Mount Vesuvius had good water retention capacity prior to its eruption, suggesting profitable agriculture. Despite the hot, dry weather, the airflow from the Tyrrhenian Sea kept the soil moist. Barley, wheat, and millet were all grown in large quantities for export to other regions, along with wine and olive oil. The archaeologists faced a conundrum as a result of the cultural differences between the mores of sexuality in ancient Rome and in counter-Reformation Europe when they discovered erotic art at Pompei and Herculaneum. Unknown numbers of finds were once more stashed away. Plaster was placed over a wall mural that showed Priapus, the ancient deity of sex and fertility, with his horrifyingly swollen penis. An older reproduction was hidden away out of prudence and only opened upon request. It wasn't found again until 1998 as a result of wetness. The Naples National Archaeological Museum has several artifacts from the subterranean city preserved. Plaster was placed over a wall mural that showed Priapus, the ancient deity of sex and fertility, with his horrifyingly swollen penis. An older reproduction was hidden away out of prudence and only opened upon request. It wasn't found again until 1998 as a result of wetness. The Naples National Archaeological Museum has several artifacts from the subterranean city preserved. For more than 250 years, Pompeii has been a well-liked vacation spot. It was a stop on the Grand Tour. It became one of the most well-liked tourist destinations in Italy in 2008, drawing up to 2.6 million tourists annually. It is a section of the Greater Vesuvius National Park, which UNESCO designated as a World Heritage Site in 1997. The neighboring town of Pompeii's economy is heavily influenced by Pompeii. Many locals work in the travel and hospitality sector as waiters, taxi or bus drivers, or hotel personnel. Due to a restriction enforced by the site's director, Professor Pietro Giovanni Guzzo, excavations at the location have typically come to an end. Less than one-third of the buildings that were exposed to the public in the 1960s are still open now, making the site typically less accessible to tourists than it formerly was.